بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. All right, the section we're on now is extremely important because the stress sunan, if you leave one of them, then you need to do a sahu prayer. The two sujood of sahu. So it's important to know these. Reciting a surah after al-Fatiha in the first and second rak'ah. So all the prayers have 2 rak'ats, except for the witr prayer obviously, but all the prayers have 2 rak'ats of the fard prayers, and then other than Fajr they have 2 or 4 or 3 or 4. Maghrib has 3 and the other have 4. So once you recite Al-Fatiha, which is a fard, then you recite the surah, the first and the second surah after the Fatiha, and that's a sunnah mu'akkada. Imam Malik radiyallahu anhu, he considered it makruh to recite parts of the Quran. So it's a full surah, which is why the Malikis, if they lead the prayer, they usually recite from the short surah, like from Wadduha to the end of the Quran is actually mustahab for the Imam to recite only from the short surah. And then at Fajr prayer, depending on the Jama'ah, it's better to pray a short. If you're leading the prayer, it's always better to short in all the madhabs, because there's weak people, there's women that have children, there's old people. And so, but in Malik's madhab, you recite a surah. It fulfills the obligation to do just a few verses, all right. But the surah is the sunnah, and all the hadith indicate that the Prophet recited a complete surah in the. I mean, Abu Hanifa radhiallahu anhu took from فَقْرَأُ مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنْهُ. He took from the Quran, but if you actually look at the prophetic practice, the Prophet was reading a whole surah.
Is it a surah per rak'ah or for the entire
salah? No, a separate surah for each rak'ah. No. Then standing for both surah. So al-qiyam, and then reciting audibly the jahar when it's jahar, and the sir when it's sir. And audibly means you can at least you hear yourself with your ear. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. That's audible. As long as you're hearing yourself. I mean, it shouldn't be something that's somebody next to you, if they can't hear it, then it's sir. And then saying Allahu Akbar, except the takbirat al-ihram, which is a fard. So Allahu Akbar as you move through the thing. And then each tashahhud. The tashahhud is a sunnah mu'akkada, the first and the second. The khuruj, the salam is a fard, but the tashahhud is a sunnah mu'akkada. The julus, sitting for the tashahhud. The first one is a sunnah mu'akkada. The second one, you have to sit for the salam. But sitting for the tashahhud is a sunnah. Alright? So the second julus has a fard in it, because you have to sit for the salam. But the sitting, the julus, is actually a sunnah mu'akkada for both tashahhud. Which is why, whenever in the prayer, if you've moved into a fard, then you abandon the sunnah. And then if it's a sunnah mu'akkada, you redress it later. So if you're if you're in your julus position, I mean the Malikis have iftirash, which is that you sit like that in all the julus position. You know, I used to be able to do that a lot easier, but it's just not as easy for me to do that. So, but that is the proper Maliki position. They don't, you know, the other madhabs are like this during the three, and then the final sitting, they do the iftirash like that. So, but say you've gone. There's your second sujood, and you're moving up. Because Malikis leave their hands for last. If at that point you remember the julus, you stay down, and you go to the iftirash, there's nothing on you. But if you're moving up, and both the knees and the hands come off, you don't go back. Because now you've moved into a fard, so you leave the sunnah. You don't go back. If you do go back, you know, it's not, you haven't done, I mean, you stay down. But one of the problems if you're leading the prayer is a lot of people don't know that ruling. So they'll sit there, Subhanallah, Subhanallah, you know, and you've already gone up, so you're not supposed to go back down. They think that you're supposed to go back down, which is why it's good to have educated people.
In sujood, what I know is that the hands should be off, the elbows should be off the ground.
Right.
I see some people doing it this way.
Yeah.
Is
No.
that something?
It's makruh to do that. No. I'll get that at the end. And then saying Sami Allahu liman hamida while rising from the bowing position, if one is the imam or praying alone. Sami Allahu liman hamida. If you're praying behind somebody, you don't, right? But you say silently Allahumma rabbana wa lakal hamd. And then the remaining sunan are like recommended acts in their ruling. So they're like mandubat. They are reciting the iqama, it's mandub, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu Muhammad. And then Malik only has one, qad aqamati salah, unlike the other imams. Prostrating with both hands, with the tips of the toes touching the ground and both knees. Silent attentiveness to the imam's recitation during an audible prayer. So you should be listening. You don't have to recite. His Fatiha is Fatiha for you, not like the Shafi'i madhab where they actually have to recite their own Fatiha. A return salam to the imam, so assalamu alaikum, and then assalamu alaikum to the imam. And then a salam to someone on your left, but you don't turn to the left. So, you know, the other schools, they go both sides. The Malikis, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and then to the imam, and then to the person on the left, but you don't actually turn your head to the left. Maintaining stillness after one's initial obligatory composure. So you have the tum'anina that's fard, but then there's a tum'anina that is sunnah to, you know, so that it's longer. It's not just fulfilling the fard. You're there for, you know, the time that it takes to fulfill the sunnahs of the Subhan Rabbil Ala, Subhan Rabbil Ala, Subhan Rabbil Ala, Ya Muqallib al-Qulub, something like that. Thabbit qalbi ala dinika. And then the sutra for the imam or someone praying on his own who thinks someone may pass in front of him. The sutra, you know, a sutra could be like a bag like that. You place it slightly to your right. A purse, a woman's purse, that could act as a sutra, like the chair there. But I mean, generally it should be about a dhira', like that, preferably like a dhira', and you put it slightly so that anybody can pass. If you're in the haram, you know, the haram has a different ruling about this because of the numbers of people and the difficulties in moving. And on Jum'ah as well, it's similar. You just let people pass. In Malik's madhab, you actually don't pray after the Jum'ah, because it says, فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةُ فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. You know, just leave. Once the prayer's over, leave. It doesn't say, صَلُّوا السُنَّةِ, or something. So in Medina they did not do that, which makes sense because people have to go back to work and they have to do, and sometimes you wait, it takes a long time before people finish the sunnah. And so he actually considered that makruh to do that because you're causing difficulty for people. What I tend to tell people is if they're going to pray sunnah, to pray on one side. Let people go out first and then move over to one side of the masjid. But just getting up and praying sunnah it's a problem because people really do have to go. And a lot of times the imam goes over his time, so people are late, especially here in the U.S. because people have to get back to their jobs and things. Anyway, and then vocalizing the first salam, so you say it, and then the second and third are silent. Saying the tashahhud according to the narration of Umar ibn al-Khattab, which is here, at-tahiyyatu lillah. It's in the Muwatta of Imam Malik. And the reason it's sunnah to do the tahiyyah of Umar radiallahu anhu is because he said it in front of all the Sahaba in a gathering in the masjid, and nobody corrected him. So it's considered like the best sigha because it has that tawatur. Supplicating for our prophets with as-salah al-Ibrahimiyya in the final sitting. Calling the adhan for a group that comes to an obligatory prayer in its appropriate time with the intention to gather people. So it's sunnah to call the adhan for a group that comes to an obligatory prayer. There's a hadith, and some of the Malikis say because of the strength of the hadith and the blessing of it, that even if you're a shepherd out, that everything testifies for you. So even though the purpose of the adhan is to call people to the prayer. I give the adhan in my house because I want my kids to hear the adhan, so the adhan's a good thing. But the Maliki position is that it's there to call people. You don't just give the adhan. It has a function. And then shortening Dhuhr, Asr, and Isha for whoever travels 4 burud, 48 Arabic miles. And we'll get into that because there's a debate about what that means. The Mauritanian practice is 32 miles, which is a lot shorter because they go by, there's a difference of opinions about whether it's 2,000 or 3,500 dira'ah. So, we'll deal with that when we get to there. But that is a sunnah. It is not sunnah to pray the full numbers if you're traveling. It's actually sunnah to shorten for 20 prayers or 4 days. And then he should desist from shortening the prayers when he reaches the dwellings of his town upon his return. Anyone intending to be a resident for 4 or more complete days in a given place during his journey must complete the prayer once they arrive to their destination without shortening it. So those are all the sunan, and the sunan and mu'akkada are 8, the 8. And then the recommended acts of the prayer, these are the mandubats. Turning the head slightly to the right to say salam, assalamu alaikum. Malikis don't go all the way around. Saying Ameen silently after the Fatiha. It's not said out loud like a lot of, if you're in the masjids, you hear people go Ameen. It's just said silently. For the one praying alone, whether reciting Fatiha audibly or silently. For the Imam, only if reciting Fatiha silently. And for the follower, after he hears the recitation of Al-Fatiha from his Imam in an audible prayer, or after he completes his own recitation in a silent prayer. Saying Rabbana wa lakal hamd, Ibn Abi Zayd has Allahumma Rabbana wa lakal hamd there in the Risala. So saying Allahumma Rabbana wa lakal hamd after standing from ruku' for all but the Imam leading the prayer. Reciting the qunut, which is the dawn supplication, silently in the second rak'at of the subh prayer. It's mandub to recite it silently. The Shafi'is recite it after the ruku', the Malikis before. The Shafi'is recite it audibly. The Malikis recite it silently. The Shafi'is recite a different sigha. Allahumma وَلِّينَ فِي مَنْ تَوَلَّيْتَ. Right? They have a different sigha. The Maliki sigha is the same as the Hanafi witr qunut sigha. Very similar. There's a slight difference. So, and that's a mandub, so if you forget it, you don't do the sahu. But it's a mandub. You can also, if you go into your ruku' and you forgot to do it, you can do it when you come out, coming out of the ruku'. Mm-hmm.
If the remaining sunnahs that he had have the same ruling as the mandubat, what's the purpose of distinguishing the two?
Because a sunnah is higher than the mandub. There's a stronger, you have the stress sunnah, which is mu'akkada, which is something the Prophet never left. The Hanafis call it wajib. That's how strong it is. So it's really close to a fard. And then you have the sunnah, which is his normative practice, which is strong. And then the mandub it's a virtuous thing, and the Prophet ﷺ did it, and it was his practice, but it doesn't have the same weight as the sunnah. That's why they're differentiating between them. So, if you left it, it's just not, it's not like leaving a sunnah. It's got a lesser, yeah. No. The Bismillah, Imam Malik doesn't recite the Bismillah, except in Namal, if you're reading. But and there's two riwayah about kullu amrin la yubda'u in one riwayah it says bi bismillah, and the other it says alhamdulillah. So they're both strong. And I think Imam Malik's position, to me, it's stronger. There are certain things, I guarantee you, I think the other madhabs are stronger about things. So it's not like ta'assub for my madhab, like, oh, it's Maliki's right all the time. The Hadith Qudsi in Al-Bukhari clearly states that Allah divided the Fatiha between Himself and between His servant. فَإِذَا قَالَ عَبْدِي الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. And that's in Al-Bukhari, and it's a Hadith Qudsi, so that's a strong proof to me. The other strong proof is the Sahaba, the practice, obviously, the Amal of Ahmad Medina, and the stronger position, because the three Imams recite, the two other Imams recite the Bismillah inaudibly. The Shafi'is, and don't forget, the Shafi'is sometimes is reacting to the Maliki, and not in a bad way. I'm not saying this in a negative way, but they are reacting to the Maliki because Imam Shafi'i's final madhab was in Egypt, and the dominant opposing team in Egypt were the Malikis. So, and because Imam Shafi'i was considered a student of Imam Malik's, the Malikis kind of, they thought it was an upstart student. That's kind of how they looked at it. So it's unfortunate, but that's a reality, and it wasn't always pleasant in Egypt. But some of the Shafi'i positions, it's like, the Bismillah. He has his dalil for it, there's no doubt. I mean, I'm not in any way belittling his dalil. But the dalil for inaudible is stronger, in my opinion. That's why the Hanafis do it. And then the dalil of Malik, which is not to recite it at all, is also strong. It's not the Shafi'is. They're all strong. I mean, these aren't, there's reasons why they have these different positions. What's that? It's silent. So the imam doesn't recite it if he's reciting audibly. Then the people behind him do it. They don't. It's just done silently. I mean, you do it silently. So, and then wearing a prayer shawl on one's shoulders is mandub. For the imam, it's stronger. He should actually, it's a sunnah to wear it. The prayer shawl is like a, I mean, it's very specific how long is the sunnah to wear it, but the Prophet did wear it. It's something also, the Jewish community wears the prayer shawl as well when they pray. So it's probably, in the Semitic tradition to do that. But that's for the men to wear. And all my teachers were very adamant about wearing the prayer shawl. So. And then leaving one's hands at one side, which is sadal, while standing in the prayer. Now, just to say a few things about it, sadal. Sadal has been attacked by, a lot of ignorant people in this time. If you look at the Maliki countries now, which almost all practice sadal 30 years ago, and now you almost don't see it. But just to go in just quickly, I wrote a very extensive paper on the subject, which goes into a lot of detail. But none of the imams, and this is something they never tell you, not one of the 4 imams considers qabl to be a sunnah. None of them. Shafi'i doesn't, Ahmad ibn Hanbal doesn't, Abu Hanifa doesn't, and Imam Malik doesn't. They all consider it, they call it min hay'at as-salah, except for the Malikis. In other words, it's just an outward form in the prayer. Imam Shafi'i in the which is one of his most important texts, he says that that somebody praying يَجْعَلُ يَدَهُ الْيُمْنَى عَلَى الْيُسْرَى, he should put his right hand over the left hand. وَإِنْ أَرْسَلَهُمَا, but if he leaves them at the side, فَلَا بَأْسَ. There's no harm in that. In other words, it's fine. You do either one, it doesn't really matter. So Imam Shafi'i's madhab is, this isn't a big deal. وَإِنْ أَرْسَلَهُمَا فَلَا بَأْسَ بِهِ إِنْ لَمْ يَعْبَثْ بِهِمْ, as long as he's not playing around with his hands. And if you also ask, now for something that would seem to be such an important sunnah that everybody says the other way is a bid'ah, if you ask anybody where did the Prophet ﷺ put his hands, nobody can tell you. Except for the Hanafis have a weak hadith that says he put them under his belly button. And that's why the Hanafis pray with it under. But nobody can tell you where he put his hands. That's the only hadith which is, it's a weak hadith. So it's funny that nobody knows where the hands were. So some Shafi'is hold it over the heart. That's just an ijtihad of their imams. It's not, there's no hadith that said the Prophet put it over his heart. It's an ijtihad from their imam. Some put it here. So you see some people doing this because of فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. Pray to your Lord and put your hands on your nahar, which is an interpretation that is so raqiq. In Arabic it doesn't have a basis because the Arabs always save the most important thing for last. So it says pray and then put your hands on your as if this is more important than the prayer. Whereas the meaning of that ayah is very clear. On the Eid, صَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ, go sacrifice your, But anyway, some people do that. So the Hanafis do it here, which is, to me personally, if I was going to do it, that is even though the Malikis tend to put it here, that is the best thing there is about where he put it. But if anybody asks, if you're going to do sadl, they're both perfectly fine, and sadl can cause problems in some communities. But if anybody asks, just say, where exactly did he put his hands? Give me a sahih hadith. So, the thing that upsets me is not, because to me it's not a big deal. What upsets me is the attack on the position. Because the position is very strong. It's not a weak position. Just a few other proofs.
What's the Arabic word for
Qabl. Yeah. To do qabl. Now, just to give you an example, there's nothing in the Quran. The only verse, so pray with your Lord and sacrifice, which is in Surah 108:2. Ibn Kathir mentions that Imam Ali said sacrifice means to place your right hand over your left hand on the upper chest, which I find to be dubious for a couple of reasons. Ali did sadal. The Shia all do sadal. Their imam was Ali. It's not something that they just made up. You know, Ja'far al-Sadiq did sadal. The riwayat on the Ahl al-Bayt are sadal. The Sunni riwayat are sadal. You know, and so the fact that Imam Ali is the one narrating this, you know, one has to wonder about that. But Ibn Kathir says it's just unsound, the narration. He actually mentions it. Despite quoting the tradition that indicates this interpretation, which is related by Daraqutni and Al-Bayhaqi, Ibn Kathir says it's غير صحيح. So he relates it and then he says it's an unsound tradition. But it's not only weak in the chain, it's rhetorically specious, because Imam Ali knows Arabic better than anybody, and you know, the particular is added to a general statement in rhetoric to emphasize superiority. You know, like if you mention the angels and then you mention Jibreel, it's to show that he's higher than the angels. You don't mention the weaker thing after the general. The particular is mentioned to emphasize. So anyway, that's the only imam that's really adamant about this, Shawkani, which is why the Salafis make it such an issue, because Shawkani was, but he was a Zaydi originally, so you have to understand, he was in a culture that was doing, everybody was doing sadal, and he became a staunch follower of the hadith. So his reaction, I mean, you have to understand the sociological aspects of a lot of this material. People don't like to think about this stuff, but there are realities to where people were and what was going on and why they take the positions they do. Now, just the most sound hadith of qabd, there's only one that's really strong, which is Sa'd bin Sa'ad. It's related in the Muwatta. It's also in Al-Bukhari. But this hadith says that the people were told to put their hands. كَانَ النَّاسِ يُؤْمَرُونَ. Now, whenever you have a passive form in hadith, mabni lil majhul, it indicates tamrid. You know, there's like a weakness. It doesn't have the strength of an active form, like the Prophet told us to do this. If it has a passive form, then you wonder why they put it in that. Mullah Ali al-Qari says it could have been the Prophet, it could have been the Khulafa, or it could have been the rulers that were telling people to do that. So even the Hanafi, one of the great Hanafi scholars of hadith, says it's not clear who was telling who to do what. But I tend to, my personal, and this is my conclusion in here, I actually think it's a political thing, because the two people that were leaving their hands at their sides were the people that were most resistant to the Umayyad rule, and that was the Khawarij and the Shia. So it's very interesting that the thing that immediately distinguishes your political allegiance is in the prayer. So for people to leave their hands at their sides when everybody's Umayyad, and that's why Hassan bin Ali, there's a riwayah, he says, look, I don't care what they're doing you know, this is the prayer of my grandfather. And this is the way he held his hands. Now, the Prophet definitely did both. There's no doubt. But the Malikis argue that this was the last practice. His last practice was leaving at his sides. So, and then the other, another major proof is that the Prophet praised the outward prayer of the Khawarij. In the hadith in Al-Bukhari, he said, when you see them pray, you will belittle your own prayers. So he praised the outward form of the Khariji prayer. Now the other hadith, which is in this hadith, which is in Tirmidhi, Abu Dawood, Ibn Majah, that Abu Humayd as-Sa'idi states in front of 10 of the companions of the Prophet, I know better than all of you the prayer of the Messenger of Allah. They said, how could that be when By Allah, you did not follow him any closer than we did, and you did not stay with him longer than us. To this he said, that's true. Then they said, well, show us then. And he then said, if the Messenger of Allah stood to the prayer, he raised his hands to his shoulders. And then he said, Allahu Akbar, until all of his limbs settled in their natural resting places. And that's a sahih hadith. حتى سكنت الجوارح إلى مواضعها, until they came to their natural resting places. And that's Shaykh Muhammad Abid said the hadith is a clear proof for sadal, because Abu Humayd is being tested and the companions would have jumped and said, no, you're wrong, he did this or that. But he didn't say, and then he put his hands over.
Wouldn't it be sunnah then to do it a different way, like maybe for a month at a time, like maybe do sunnah?
Well, no, because, you know, this is practice. Malik's madhab is about practice, and this is what they view the practice to be. You can do it in nafila, and that's when Imam Malik was asked about it. And he said, if the prayer gets long, there's no harm in putting your hand doing the qabl. That's his position, and that's what's in the Mudawwana. For people to say that his position, the Madani position of Mutarraf and Ibn Majishun is the qabl, you know, they're not looking, I don't think, because some of the Malikis argue this, but if you actually look at the riwayah, they just say that Malik said, la ba's. There's no harm in it. And then again, it indicates that the masala was not, you know, it wasn't a strong masala. But I will say, and this is where the Malikis, where our position about sadal, especially that it's mashhur, is strong. And that is because the Iraqi Malikis consider the qabl to be haram. And they're the only, Malik is the only madhab that sees qabl as haram. No other madhab sees the sadal as haram or even makruh. Do you see what I mean? So when you have a position, and the Iraqi madhab of the Malikis is very strong. I mean, these are some of the giants of Islamic history. Qadi Abdul Wahhab, Abu Bakr al-Baqallani. I mean, these are big ulama. And they considered it prohibited because they said it was i'timad. And what that means, you know, it to get something in your prayer unless you need to. It's called i'timad. You have to, Quran has to be independent. And so, tarawih, and according to the Malikis, tarawih, you know, is that moving back and forth like that. Because when you stand for long periods of time, you tend to yatarawah. You know, you'll move back and forth. What the qabl does is it stabilizes. So when you do sadr, it's very hard to do that. You'll tend to put your weight on either, just like people that stand naturally, you'll tend to put your weight on the left or the right side. When you do qabl, it's a type of i'timad. It's a way of stabilizing your weight. And so that's one of the reasons why they considered it to be, the other Maliki said it was makruh for that reason. But because you're depending on your own self, your weight. But the Iraqi said no, it's not. And Allahu Alam, I mean, my point is, this is not a big issue with me in terms of qabl. I have no problem with qabl at all. It's a strong position. I don't think it's personally as strong as Marabt al-Hajj, when he went to the east and he read al-Bukhari and the hadith in Medina, he came back doing qabl in Mauritania. He was a young man, and he's a brilliant young scholar, and he came back and that was his position. There's Malikis that say that. There are Malikis that prefer the qabl. And people complained about because nobody else did qabl in Mauritania. Marabt al-Hajj could care less what other people thought. But, his sheikh, some students went to him, and he told me this himself. Some students went to him, the sheikh, and said, who does he think he is, doing the qabl. And his sheikh said, just leave him alone. He'll as he learns, he'll leave it. And that's what happened. He said that he realized that the position for sadal in the madhab is much stronger than it is for qabl. And that's why the Malikis have argued for it over the, anyway, I think if you read the, inshallah, this will be out soon. If you read the argument in here, it's a very strong argument. I'll just, to tell you who, okay, this is Imam Shawkani saying this, all right? So it's coming from somebody who was against the sadal. Abdullah ibn Zubair, these are the people that practice sadal and are known in our tradition to have practiced sadal. Abdullah ibn Zubair. Who's Abdullah ibn Zubair? Does anybody know who he is?
He was the firstborn.
Right, he's firstborn in the Hijrah, but who's his mother? Who's Asma? Exactly. So this is the son of the daughter of Abu Bakr. And Abdullah ibn Zubair did sadal. He actually saw a man doing qabd in the haram when he was the governor, when he was actually the khalifa, because for a short period of time he was the caliph in Mecca. And he stopped, he was doing tawaf and he saw a man doing qabd, and he went and he broke his hands and put them at his sides. And that's a riwayah thabita. So, there were political things going on at that time. It's very interesting. I mean, it's interesting that why the Al-Bayt, why they all did sadr. Ja'far al-Sadiq, Musa Kadhim, Baqir al-Sadr. I mean, these are the, What's that? Yeah. No. In the Muwatta, all he does is relate the hadith. And that's what these modern Malikis argue. The early Malikis, none of them argued that. These are people that say, oh look, the qabd's in the Muwatta. There's several hadiths in the Muwatta that he doesn't follow. He just puts them in there to show you that he knows them. There are several hadiths where he doesn't practice what's in the Muwatta. And he doesn't make any ta'liq, like this is not my madhab. He just puts it in there to let people know, I'm aware of the hadith. But in the Mudawwana, Ibn al-Qasim asked Malik, and Ibn al-Qasim is the most authentic voice of Malik. He asked him, what do you say about the qabd? And he said, لا أعرفه في الفريضة. It's not something that I'm aware of people doing it during the fariḍah. And he said, but it's all right to do it in the nafila if the prayer goes for a long time. And that's in Bab al-i'timad. It's in the chapter on i'timad, on relying on something in the prayer. That's where he puts it in the Muwatta. So he asks him, what do you say about qabd for, And that some people argue that if it's for i'timad. But in the end, that's what that's the effect that it has on your hay'ah. So Ibn Zubair, Hasan al-Basri. Who's Hasan al-Basri? He's tabi', but who is he? Who's his teacher? He was wet nursed by Salama, but who's his teacher? Imam Ali. So here's Abu Bakr's daughter, her son, and then Imam Ali's primary student, Nakha'i. Who was Nakha'i? He's the student of Ibn Abbas. All of them consider leaving the sides to be the correct position, and they should not place the right hand over the left. This is Imam Shawkani, people. This isn't, this is Imam Shawkani in Nail al-Awtar. Imam Nawawi relates that this was also the madhab of Layth ibn Sa'd. Who's Layth ibn Sa'd? He was a faqih from Egypt. They considered him, Imam Shafi'i said about Layth, kana afqah min Malik. He was more learned in fiqh than Imam Malik, but he didn't have the type of students that Imam Malik had. So this is the position of Layth ibn Sa'd. It's the position al-Mahdi relates that this was the position of the Qasimiyya, the Nasiriyya, as well as the position of Muhammad al-Baqir from the Shia. But Muhammad al-Baqir is considered by the Sunnis to be a Sunni Imam. The Shia claim him, but he's considered one of... It's the position of Ibn al-Qasim, who relates it from Imam Malik. It's also the position of Ibn Abul Hakam. It's the position... And then he says, it is that Imam al-Awza'i... Who was Imam al-Awza'i? He's the Imam of Ahl al-Sham. His madhab was one of the dominant madhabs. It died out. Imam al-Awza'i said a man can choose between one or the other. He didn't prefer one over the other. He said both of them are strong. But the majority of scholars have, and this is what Shawkani says, but the majority of their scholars have preferred clasping, and their proof is that 28 companions were of this position, and 2 among the tabi'een. So you can see, if you're fair about that, you can clearly see this is not some cut and dry situation of, oh, Imam Malik got his arms pulled out while he was being punished in Medina. This is what people say. It's total rubbish. And it really bothers me, It just really bothers me that they belittle this position when it's a very strong position. Imam Ibn Abd al-Barr, who is called Hafid al-Maghrib, that preferred qabat from the Malikis. But in Al-Kafi he said, يَجْعَلُ يَدُ الْيُمْنَ عَلَى الْيُسْرَى أَوْ يُرْسِلُهُمَا فَكُلُّ ذَلِكَ مِنَ السُنَّةِ. All of that is part of the sunnah, to do either one or the other. That's Ibn Abd al-Barr, who preferred the qabat. But in the Kafi, his Fiqh Ahl al-Medina, he says, either one, they're both from the sunnah. And now Shawkani claims that he only mentions 2 of the tabi'een, Imam al-Shawkani, that had this position of the ulama of the tabi'een. And his 2 are Hasan al-Basri and Tawus. But there's other riwayat that prove both of them actually prefer the... Tawus can be proven to have that opinion, because... and the record of it is in the Mursal in Ibn Abi. For Hasan is recorded to have left his hands at his side. And this is what Ibn Qudama says in Al-Mughni. Ibn Qudama, the great Hanbali scholar, said that Hasan al-Basri prayed with his hands at his sides. This is a man who knew, hundreds, if not thousands, of the Sahaba. And he's considered one of the most learned of the tabi'een. And this is his position, according to what's related by our scholars. Now here, Muhajir al-Nabal said that Ibn Mubarak, in his book of Zuhud, says he heard Muhajir al-Nabal say, when asked about doing the qabat in the prayer, whoever does that has not appropriately expressed abasement in the presence of power. And then Ibn Mubarak says, Ibn Mubarak is a student of Imam Malik, he's one of the great scholars of the tabi'een. Ibn Mubarak says, and a similar opinion is reported from Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And one scholar said, this is one of the best things that I have heard. And we also relate from Bishr al-Hafi. This is Ibn al-Mubarak. Bishr al-Hafi said, for 40 years I have wanted to put my right hand over my left in prayer. So he was doing sadl, Bishr al-Hafi. I wanted to do, and the only thing that prevented me from doing so is that I would be displaying a level of fear outwardly that was not present in my heart. And that's one of the reasons why the Malikis say that it's makruh, because idhar al-khushu'. This is called idhar al-khushu'. When you pray, sometimes you see people praying like this. That's makruh to do that, because it's outwardly displaying a fear. That you should be relaxed, because the mahal al-khawf is the heart. So what he said is that Bishr al-Hafi said, according to Ibn al-Mubarak, that I prayed with my hands. I wanted to do that, but I didn't want to. But I couldn't do it for 40 years. I didn't do it. He probably wanted to do it once, maybe just to fulfill that sunnah or something. But he said he wouldn't do it because he would be displaying outwardly a fear that was not in his heart. He worried about that. It was obviously just his piety, because he had immense piety. So anyway, also Sa'id ibn Jubair, who did the sadl as well, one of the great scholars of the tabi'een. I mean, there's many of these. And now who knows Sa'id ibn Musayyib? Who is he? And his marasil, the marasil of Sa'id, are the strongest of, when most of the ulama take his marasil of Sa'id. In other words, if he said it's a hadith, they don't mind the fact that he didn't mention the Sahaba, because he was such a sound. Ibn Yazid, a Medinan scholar of hadith who taught Malik, said, I never once saw Sa'id ibn Musayyib clasp his right hand over his left hand in prayer. He used to leave them at his sides. Kan yursiluhuma. Sa'id ibn Musayyib was no ordinary person. He learned from the most prominent companions of the Sahaba, of the Prophet ﷺ. Imam Dhahabi says about him, he was born 2 years into Umar's caliphate. He saw Umar learn from Uthman, Ali, Zayd ibn Thabit, Abu Musa, Sa'ad, Aisha, Abu Huraira, as well as Ibn Abbas, Muhammad ibn Maslama, Salama, and many others beside. It has been noted that he learned from Umar. He was notable in knowledge and action, and he issued fatwas during the lifetime of the companions of the Prophet, Az-Zuhri and Qatada, as well as many others narrate. Sa'id ibn Musayyib's own student said he never saw him put his hands together in the prayer. I mean, he's learning from all those people. So, finally, I'll give you a little spiritual musing. Also just Hassan, the son of Ali, when Muhammad Jahada mentioned the position of Sadl to Hassan bin Ali, he replied that it's part of the prayer of the Messenger of Allah. Whoever does it, does it, and whoever does not, does not. That was Hassan bin Ali. Yeah, Sayyidina Hassan. So, here's what Imam Abu Hafs Umar al-Sahawawardi, the Mujaddidi, Freydun's great-grandfather. Here's what he said in his book, Awarif al-Ma'arif. I thought this was quite beautiful. God, in His infinite and subtle wisdom, created the human being, honoring and dignifying him and making him the point of His contemplation, the wellspring of His revelation, the best of what is in the heaven and the earth, both the spiritual as well as the material, celestial, and terrestrial. He is made in upright form of exalted spirit. His upper half from the point of the heart is the storehouse of the secrets of the heavens, and the lower half is the storehouse of the secrets of the earth. The center of his ego is in the lower half, and the center of his spiritual soul and heart is in the upper half. Hence, the pull of the ego conflicts with the pull of the spirit. So you have these two forces. That's why the hara, in Asian tradition, especially Japan, is so important, because that's where it's divided. The lower self, which is stomach and genitals, is the primary pull of the lower self, and then the higher self, which is heart and intellect, are the primary pull of the upper self, right? So the spirit, the breath, is in the upper part of the body, right? And so that point, there's a pull. What he's saying is there's a pull. So the angels are pulling you up, the demons are pulling you down. The demons want you to go down, and whereas the angels are pulling you up, and the Prophet's way is a balanced way. So you're balanced in your earthly life and in your celestial life, so that you're fulfilling your, you fast but you eat. He said, "Asum wa uftiru." I fast but I eat also. So I have my spiritual work, but I also recognize my earthly needs. Anamu wa aqum. I sleep and I get up. Sleep is the pull of the body, and the right. So he says, at the time of the prayer, the battle is particularly acute due to the conflict between one's faith and one's bestial nature. That's why the shaitan comes, right? Khinzab. Does everybody know Khinzab? Khinzab. He's a shaitan, yeah. The Prophet ﷺ said, a man came to him and he said, Ya Rasulullah, Inna shaytana yahulu bayni wa bayna salati wa qira'ati. Shaitan is preventing me from doing my prayer and my recitation of Quran. And he said, ذَاكَ شَيْطَانٌ يُقَالُ لَهُ خِنْزَبٌ. That's a shaitan, his name is Khinzab. So like the Prophet ﷺ had knowledge of these. SubhanAllah. So he said, if he comes, Khinzab, you know, he has a name, SubhanAllah. Yeah. But the ma'rifah of the Prophet is such a blessing because he knew what to do. Like most people don't know what to do. So the Sahabi went to the doctor and said, you know, I'm having this problem. And then he said, if you have that, ta'awwad, say a'udhu billahi min shaitanir rajim, and spit on your left 3 times. Spit, and you can defeat khinzab. So if you're finding difficulty like doing that, just do that. Allahu Akbar. So then he says, so the one praying whose heart is celestial discovers he is moving between evanescence and continuity due to the pull of his lower soul as it rises from the center. So during the prayer, the soul is moving up. Right? So there's that pull. And his limbs and their movements and activities have a relationship and balance with these inner meanings. So by placing one's right hand over one's left hand, the self is prevented from its rise. And it is this position obstructs it from elevation of its attractions. Shortly thereafter, the benefit appears due to the diminishment of compulsive thoughts and ego chatter in the prayer, until the point when the spiritual powers are in complete control and possess the self from head to toe, resulting in complete intimacy, and one achieves the eye's delight and the conquest of the authority of divine witnessing. The ego becomes pliant and subdued, and it is illuminated by the spiritual center's light. At this point, the self's attractions cease. Based upon the illumination of the soul's center, he is able to perform all his acts of devotion and no longer needs to oppose his lower self or hold down these lower impulses with his hands. He can now leave his hands at his sides. And perhaps, and God knows best, this explains why it has come down to us in the traditions of the Messenger of Allah that he used to pray with his hands at his sides. And this is the position of Imam Malik also. So that's a Hanafi scholar. It's not a Maliki. Like he's saying that that is the prayer of the Arifin, is to leave the hands at the side. Because it's a state of complete submission. That's why the other Imam, was, when he was asked about it, he said it's not the prayer of somebody who's in submission to God. If you're doing that, it means you're still struggling with yourself. He's saying, you know, that is the state of submission. Anyway, these are all... The only reason I'm really going on this is, if you're going to do it, I don't mind. But you should know it's a very strong position. It's not a weak position. And 2, the reason I'm adamant about it is because it's keeping a sunnah alive that people are trying to eliminate. Within the Sunni tradition, it's still there in the Shia and the Ibadi. The Ibadis pray with their hands at the side also. But the Sunnis, they're trying to wipe it out. Morocco, you don't even see people do it anymore unless you go into the villages. Like in the cities, they all do qabl now. And I went to Morocco in 1977, nobody did qabl. So that's how quickly, for 1,400 years, the Moroccans were, you know, 1,200 years, Moroccan was the center of Maliki learning. And all those centuries they were doing sadr, and in this enlightened age of incredible scholarship and magnificent ulama that have never graced this ummah, you know, suddenly they all realized they were wrong for the last 1,000 years, you know, and we're the best people. All those people were wrong, and now we finally know how the sunnah is to pray. Give me a break. You know, really, it's just too much. It's just anarchy. It's all this anarchy. You know, the Malikis had one of the great blessings of the Malikis is that their countries had no bid'ah. You know, they were like, they all had the same aqidah. They had, if you went to Sudan, you went to Tunis, Libya, Algeria, it was all the same books, the same they didn't have all these sects and all this fighting and all. This is all stuff that has come, you know. It's very sad. I mean, even Tajuddin al-Subki says there's mubtadi'ah in the Hanbali, the Shafi'i and the Hanafis, but he said Allah barra'a al-Malikiyah. You know, he said Allah freed the Maliki. Imam Subki, who was a Shafi'i, and he was Shafi'i, strong Shafi'i. He said that Allah has freed the Malikis from the Mubtadi'ah. That's in his Mu'id al-Ni'am wa Mubid al-Naqam. Yeah, that's partly true. King Hassan, you know, wa rahmatullah alayhi, I mean, King Hassan basically started doing qabl. Everybody did sadr before him. And he did qabl, and because King Hassan loved hadith, he actually used to read a lot of hadith. He started Dar al-Hassan, you know, Dar al-Hadith al-Hassaniyah, you know, in Fas, for the study of hadith, because hadith had died out considerably in Morocco. So he actually, but he wasn't at the level, you know, I mean, he didn't have the type of scholarship, you know. He's definitely was muta'allim. He wasn't jahil. He was a hafiz of Quran. He knew Arabic very well, and he'd studied fiqh and things like that. But he wasn't like a alim. And he did that, and that's true. But don't forget, his father had his wife come out without a hijab. And so the Moroccans all took their hijabs off as well. So, you know, الناس على دين ملوكهم. People follow the religion of their kings. You know, so that happens. But, I mean, King Hassan was a scholar. I'm not going to, you know, deny that. And that does have something to do, but it has more to do with the fact that all of these, this literature, and I mean, you know how strong a lot of the shabab now, they think Maliki madhab is all bid'ah, and right, in Morocco, isn't that true? Yeah, so and they're opposed to sadr based on this kind of Salafi position that it's a bid'ah, but it's not a bid'ah. All you have to do is do your own research and see that many great ulama from the Sahaba and Tabi'een were noted to have done this practice. And these aren't made up riwayat. These are, you know, it's not like Malik alone took this position. You know, and it's the position of his madhab. It's the position of the Iraqi Malikis. It's the position of the Egyptian Malikis.
That book that you just quoted off, is it the one that's found in Saudi?
I don't know. I don't see why it would be. Well, it's pretty strong Ash'ari. But I mean, most Saudis, you know, they've lightened up a lot on the books. You can get a lot of books in Saudi now that you couldn't get before. So,
So it was so strong because, like, we always thought, you know, Sunnis would always do the Qadr and the Ibadis would always do the Hamza. So even kids, you know, growing up,
yeah.
distinguish yourself like that.
Well, that's what I mean. See, I think it became a political thing. Like, I really believe that. If you study that early period, I think the Shia and the insurrectionists, most of them did the sadr. And so it's just a brilliant way for rulers to kind of distinguish who's for you and who's against you. You know, whereas the Malikis maintain that tradition. But you can see all of the Imams in their words, the qabd was not a big deal. And that's why none of them said it was sunnah. And that's where I just take objection to these people arguing against sadr, because the Imams of the four madhabs do not argue that point. That it's like this sunnah mu'akkada, or you have to do sujood as-sahw. None of them say you have to do if you leave it. So if it's such a light issue amongst them, why is there such antagonism against the sadr? Is it just because the Shia and the Ibadi do that? Is that it? Because they do it? Well, they do a lot of things we do. They pray 5 times a day, you know. They fast Ramadan. I mean, you know, they get most of it right. The few things that we disagree with them are not. So why is that such a big issue? And the Ibadi, who are the remnants of the Khawarij, like I said, the Prophet praised the Khariji prayer. He said, عِنْدَ صَلَاتِهِمْ تَحْقِرُونَ صَلَاتَكُمْ. When you see them pray, you will have contempt of your own prayer. Because they were known to have outward adherence, very strict outward adherence to the prayer. Anyway, enough said about Sadaq. Number 8 is saying Allahu Akbar at the beginning of each transition except after the middle sitting, in which case one says Allahu Akbar when you go up. So when you're praying, as you move into the next position, you begin by Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. But when you do if you're in the second julus, so this is the second julus, you've done your tahiyyah, then you go up, and you wait until you come to composure to say Allahu Akbar. So the Imam should do that, and I mean the first julus, sorry, yeah. Good, paying attention. And then closing the 3 lower fingers of one's right hand during the tashahhud while extending the thumb and the index finger. So you close these like a gun, like that, and then put the thumb there, and then you place it there. Some people do that, but the sunnah of the Malikis is that you place the hand there, and then, you know, some people go way overboard on this one, you know, and it's really distracting for other people, you know. So they, you know, literally, they do. It's a very, you know, the Malikis, it's supposed to just the finger, like that. And Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi said, because the movement is in the utbiyah of the Maliki text, and he said, لا تلتفت إلى العتبية لا تلتفت إلى تحريك السبابة في العتبية فإنها بلية. Don't look at moving the finger in the utbiyah because it's a baliya, it's like a calamity. So he was of the opinion that you keep it straight. Marabt al-Hajj, it was very slight, his movement, you know, and it's a concentration because you're supposed to focus on the finger. It's the shahada finger, you know. Ibn Abi Zayd in the Shuruh, they mentioned that it's the sword of the believer, you know. It's like in the face of shaitan. That's what he says. So. And that's the whole time. You don't stop it when you do the shahada. The moving is slight to the right and left. It's not up and down. To the right. And some people do it like that. But it's actually to the right and left, and it's during that tashahhud period. So yeah, the whole time. And then for men, distancing the abdomen from the thighs and the elbows from the knees while prostrating. So the women have a closer, you know, they keep their body together, whereas the men, they actually distance. Sitting, using the appropriate sitting position during both tashahhuds, which is the iftirash, not the tawarruk, which is where you put the left foot on your buttock. The iftirash is to put your left foot under the other. And then reciting, straightening the knees without locking them. So you don't lock the knees while bowing. And then firmly placing the hands on the knees while bowing. Reciting Fatiha and a surah when appropriate for the follower of an imam during a silent prayer. Placing both hands at the ear level during prostration. So they're at the ear level in the prostration. Raising the hands up to the shoulders while saying the takbirat al-ihram, and then after that you don't. Lengthening the recitation after Fatiha for the subh and dhuhr prayer in both surahs. So subh and dhuhr, if you're praying alone, it's recommended that you lengthen the prayer, the surah. So you can recite, you know, Sayyidina Uthman in the Muwatta, he used to recite Yusuf at subh prayer when he was caliph. In fact, many people in Medina, they said they memorized it for that reason. And dhuhr also. And then the other, reciting a surah of moderate length from Isha. The moderate length is from Abasa to Wadduha. Those are the moderate length surahs. And that's for Isha. And then short surahs for Asr and Maghrib, which is from Duha to the end of the Quran. Reciting a surah for the second rak'at that is shorter than the first rak'at for every prayer. Shortening the middle sitting so that it is shorter than the final sitting. And placing the hands on the ground before the knees while descending to prostrate. However, when rising, the knees leave the ground before the hands. All right? So the hands go down first, and then the knees when going down. And then on the way up, the knees leave the ground, and then the hands. And then, so now the discouraged acts of the prayer. These are the makruhat. Saying Bismillah in an obligatory prayer. You can do it in the nafila. You can do the iftitahiyya. You know, the Subhanakallah wa bihamdika. You can do what the du'as that the Prophet did when he at the outset in the nafila. There's no karahiyya. And then you can do Bismillah. You can do A'udhu billahi min shaitanir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All of that in the nafila. But in the fard, you don't do that. And then the ta'awudh also in an obligatory prayer. Prostrating on one's garment. It's makruh to prostrate on like your scarf or your garment or something. I mean, again, prostration is a kind of, it's tadallul bayna yaday Allah. You know, it's not humiliating, but it's humbling yourself before God. And so it's not encouraged to pray in the Maliki madhab on anything that's you know, nice, fine, or anything. Yeah, like even prayer rugs. The Malikis, if you go to Morocco, what do they have in the masjids? Now they have plastic, but they used to have, yeah, the hasir. They used to have the grass mats. No, it is. They use plastic matting now. But it used in the older mosques they still do, but you know it's just cheaper, made in China. Bring it all in. So, but the masjids, you know, in the Maliki countries, they always used mats that were made out of earth, so grass mats, straw, and then in the winter they would bring in carpets because there's a udhr. So they bring in the carpets in the winter because of the udhr. But generally, they don't pray on carpet. The Prophet's masjid, we know, had sand in it. So they were praying on sand. Palm leaves, same thing. Sudan, all the Maliki countries traditionally used earth because a sujood ala mutaraffah, you know, something that is luxurious or anything is makruh. And so praying on one's garment, prostrating on the folds of one's turban, prostrating on part of one's sleeve. People used to have very big sleeves. Mm-hmm.
So what if, like, for male or peace, somewhere where there's no grass or an area and it's not right to put on this jacket?
I mean, yeah, if it's dirty, if it's a place where people are walking all the time, like, you know, I mean, I'll put my jacket down at the airport or something like that, because it's dirty and people have najasa on their shoes and things. Yeah, I mean that's a lot of this is common sense. You know, you don't, if a place isn't clean, and then I mean, you know, prayer rugs are good things to have because it's praying on a clean place is a fard. And so if you're out in public places, it's better to have something, you know, little prayer rug or something. I mean, now they have nice, tiny little, you can carry it around. And then having anything in one's mouth during the prayer, you know, like a coin or something. People do funny things. Reciting Quran while prostrating or bowing. So Quran, it's makruh to do Quran in either the ruku' or the sujood. You shouldn't do the recitation of Quran. Supplicating while bowing. It's makruh to do dua in the bowing position, not in the... not in the sajda, yeah. And then interlocking the fingers like this, right? Cracking the knuckles, placing the hands on the hips, closing the eyes unless for added concentration. So if you're somebody that has a hard time concentrating and you get distracted, because the Prophet was asked about people who move their eyes in the prayer, and he said that shaitan is stealing from their prayer. So it's better to close your eyes if you need to concentrate like that than to be distracted by people. Mm-hmm.
What are we supposed to say in ruku' and in sajda? And also, is there anything we're supposed to say, is there any sort of practice of saying a dua right before the taslim?
You do the witr of Subhana Rabbil Azim, Subhana Rabbil Azim in the ruku' or Subhana Rabbil Azim wa bihamdihi. And then, so you do it 1, 3, 5 times like that. And then when you come out of the Sami Allahu liman hamida, Allahumma rabbana wa lakal hamd, Allahu akbar, into sajda, and then the sunnah is Subhana Rabbil Ala 3 times, 5 times, a witr amount, Subhana Rabbil Ala. And then there's du'as. The Prophet ﷺ, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinika wa ta'atika, subuhun qudusun rabbal malaikati wal ruh. You can see them in the adhkar of Imam Nawawi. There's things that the Prophet did. You can make dua, Allahumma gfirli warhamni wa tub alayya, whatever you want to do. I wouldn't ask for like a Mercedes or anything like that. And then Khalil adds a few other things, sitting on one's 2 heels. And I think that actually is a position, I don't know. But you see some, in Egypt I've noticed that. People do, like they do like that. That's makruh. It's shaitan's julus according to the hadith. So.
Is it also easier for you to not have that stillness between sujood when you have that?
Yeah, I mean it's just as makruh. So placing feet together while standing. So the feet should be at shoulder, in line with your shoulders. And then this thing that thank God, when I first became Muslim it was all over, but it's definitely died down somewhat. This thing of, of putting people's, that's a hadith. It's in Sahih al-Bukhari, and the man that relates it was 8 years old. He was back with the kids, and the Prophet would say to come together, and he said they used to put he was 8 years old. Read the Ibn Hajar's, oh God. It's like people reading hadith and not knowing what this stuff means. Again, it's like 1,400 years and everybody was wrong, and suddenly the illuminated Muslims come to explain to us, Ya akhi, don't you know you're supposed to put your, It's insane. It's like a madness. You can't, they drive you crazy, those people. You feel like punching them. Because they're more concerned about their feet than they are about their hearts. Look, and this is another proof for sadr that I'll show you. Because we know that they prayed shoulder to shoulder, right? Hadw al-mankib wal-mankib. That is a sunnah. Now look, if you put that together with another person, it's ridiculous, first of all. It's just not a sunnah. There's nothing in any of the books that say it. It's a modern bid'ah from somebody misreading a hadith from Nu'man. You see, he was a little boy. He was 8 years old when he recited. And the boys were in the very back, and the Prophet said, حَذْوَ الْمَنْكِبْ بِالْمَنْكِبْ, قَدَمْ بِالْقَدَمْ. In other words, line up. So they were probably back there thinking, oh, let's line, and that's how they understood it. They were little kids. So, but if you look now let's both go into qabl. See what it does? It spreads you apart. So the shoulders aren't, so when you're like that,
if I'm like this, it's hard for you to do
it's hard to do it, yeah. So when you're like that, the shoulders they're together, literally. But when you do that, it puts you apart. So that's another one of my proofs. So placing feet together while standing, placing one foot above the other while standing, supplicating in other than Arabic for one who is able to speak Arabic, transporting soil of a comfortable temperature to the mosque to prostrate on. I mean, people, in wintertime it would be very cold, so some of the rich people would take, or it was hot, it was too hot. So because the sun was there, they would have somebody move the earth from a shaded area to put it where he was going to do sajda. So that's makruh, to move the earth for temperature. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they're going to have heated prayer rugs pretty soon. Nobody's thought of this one yet, but you'll get a little electric prayer rug. You can plug it in. It'll be heated. Somebody here is like, ka-ching. It gets really hot. Exactly. You can't do sajda. You'll fry your forehead. It's so hot. You pretty much, put something down. I mean, they're changing that now because they're actually building the shades. So it's all going to be shaded. It's almost done. They didn't think of that. They built the whole thing. They brought the best marble from Italy. It was cost a fortune. This marble is like the most expensive marble in the world because it doesn't absorb sun. Do you know the white marble? Because you could walk on it even at midday and it wasn't that hot. It's what they have around the Kaaba, same marble. So they put all that marble and then they just decided, let's put so they dug it all up and it's all been replaced. It's just madness. Again, it's really sad. And it's all money and people contracts and business deals. And Imam Malik radiallahu anhu, when the caliph asked him if he could destroy the Kaaba and build it according to because the Prophet ﷺ said, had my people not been newly converted into Islam, I would have rebuilt the Kaaba at the original Qawaid Ibrahim, because the Kaaba now is not, it's less than what Ibrahim built it on. The Shadarwan, that marble thing that comes out, that's the original foundations. And Imam Malik said, لا تفعل فإني أخاف أن تصبح الكعبة لعبة بأيدي الملوك. Because if you do that, it's going to become some kind of entertainment for the kings. Like every king comes, he wants to outdo the previous king that went before him, rebuild it and tear that all down. I'm going to do mine. Because now we have the king so-and-so, and then now king so-and-so dies, and king so-and-so comes, and he says, I'm going to do it because I want my name on the... It's exactly what Imam Malik was worried about. Baqiyah. And then supplicating while standing before recitation. So that's doing some of the du'as that people make. Supplicating before tashahhud. You can supplicate after tashahhud. Supplicating after the imam has said the final salam. So once he says the final salam, you go out. Don't wait until he goes out. don't wait to do extra things. Finish your tashahhud, but don't do extra things after the imam has gone out. You should go out with him. And then supplicating after the first tashahhud. So at the first tashahhud you don't supplicate. You do the tashahhud as it is, and then in the second tashahhud you can do the supplication. Now these are things that invalidate the prayer, so I guess we'll do that tomorrow, inshallah. The hardest bab is the sahu, and it's kind of a long, but alhamdulillah, I think we're getting through this. Yeah, no, alhamdulillah. Yeah, alhamdulillah, we're getting through this. I think I can finish it. Mm-hmm.
Is it permissible for someone else to put a sutra in front of somebody praying in order to pass?
Yeah, no, you could. Yep, you could do that. The tahiyyah that the Malikis recite, التحيات لله الزكيات لله الطيبات الصلوات لله السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. That's the one that التحيات لله الزكيات لله الطيبات والصلوات لله السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. What's that? I mean, just to give you the prayer, basically, the feet are like shoulder length like that, which is obvious why you shouldn't be doing those things. And then you go up to the hadwa al-mankibain, right there to the shoulders. Allahu Akbar, go down, and then it just rests at the side. And then the Malikis actually look straight ahead. If you find that, they don't look. Yeah, that's why one of the, some of the Salaf said he prayed without ever seeing the back of anybody's head, meaning it was always in the first prayer line. So it's basically you look to the horizon. The other madhabs, they have mawda' as-sujud, that you look to the place of sujud. So you have to work out for yourselves what works best for you. I mean, that's the Maliki position, but if it causes concentration problems. And then your head shouldn't be, because that's all khushu'. So your head's actually supposed to be up, like your neck. You should be in a natural position. Your head shouldn't be broken in the prayer. And then when you go down, Allahu Akbar at the outset, hands there, it's not locked like that. They should be straight, but not locked. And then your head shouldn't be broken either. It should be like that. And then up, like that, tuma'nina. And then down, you go down, hands first, and then for the woman, obviously does it closer together and keeps her body lower. For the man, you have like that, and then your hands are at the ear point. And then the iftirash is the Maliki, to do the iftirash. So it would be like this. In all of the sittings, you go like that. And then some people have feet that are better designed for this. If you notice, like some people get all the toes going. But it's a very interesting, because in Chinese medicine, pineal glands here, which is the master gland. So stimulating that is like a really good, it's very interesting that's, because it's definitely got some meaning of why you would put that toe. It's doing something. But in Chinese medicine, it's actually stimulating the meridian and the pineal gland, strengthening it. Yeah. Anyway, so that, and then you go up. You go up like that, release, and then off, back up, and that's pretty much the hay'ah of the Malikis.
I read that in the second jalsa that you can say after the end of the first part of the tashahhud, the salawat, to say وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّ جَاءَ بِهِ مُحَمَّدٌ
حَقٌّ. Yeah. I mean, there's different things that, those are all, there's things that are in the hadiths and that people add. Even, سَمِعَ اللَّهُ لِمَنْ حَمِدَهُ رَبَّنَا وَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ حَمْدًا كَثِيرًا طَيِّبًا مُبَارَكًا فِيهِ. That's in a Sahih hadith. It's not a Maliki thing. Some people do it, I mean, I actually do that. But the reason I do it is to remember not to go. Because I learned in Mauritania fast. And I was with Mauritania for consistently for almost 7 years. So praying with them all the time got me into some bad habits because they're Bedouin, and they pray fast. Most of the ulama don't, the real ulama don't do that, but generally Mauritanians pray fast. So they tend to, they come up, out, and they go right into the, so Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya, because the Saudis err on the other side, but it's actually, their prayer is very good. The way they pray in Saudi Arabia, the imams, they really take their time. It's a little too long because, if you go into a masjid in Saudi Arabia, you're not going to get out for a while. Which is not really fair to the people, but the prayer, they're very good on just the outward form of the prayer and taking their time in each of those positions, which is good. So you can get into bad habits with prayer. Just praying too quickly.
What would be the proper interpretation of the hadith and even the strength level of the hadith? The Prophet says that about connecting the feet, that if there's any gaps, the shaitan comes between the people and put division in the hearts.
Yeah, no, that's true. You shouldn't have gaps. That's why people should be up like there.
So it's the shoulders, not the feet.
It's not the feet.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's something. Even Ibn Hajar mentions a riwayat for one that if anybody tried that today, people would get angry, and that was centuries ago. But that hadith which Nu'man ibn Bishr, Bishr ibn Nu'man, Nu'man ibn Bashir, he was a young boy who relates that hadith, and he said, we used to do this. That's in Sahih Bukhari. And that's what they based the whole thing on his riwayah. But all I'm saying is, why did none of the imams in the 4 madhabs, not one of the ulama said that this is mandub? Show me in any madhab. Did you learn Hanafi madhab? Yeah.
No, that's not.
There's nothing. So why did they get that wrong if it's so important? Why did the 4 imams all miss that one? Why is it in the mandubat to put your feet together? Doesn't that make sense to you? I mean, it would seem, this is something somebody 20 years ago read that hadith in al-Bukhari and said, oh, people haven't been doing that for 1400 years. We need to revive the sunnah.
In Bukhari also it says that Sahaba would place their shoes by the side of their feet, so that's a proof against having the feet.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Anyway, It's very distracting for people. It's just a sign of somebody who hasn't studied fiqh, or they read the wrong book. You know. But I've never seen any of the ulama that I've studied with all condemned it. And Sheikh Ali al-Faqih used to get really angry. He said, "What are you guys, wrestlers? Are you wrestling with your Lord?" Wallahi, he used to get so upset. He was an imam in Abu Dhabi, beautiful faqih, real faqih, Shafi'i. He used to get really upset. He said, "What is that? Stop that." No, I've seen people literally like this, and then like as you move away, they move towards you. It's like, leave me alone. And they're like moving.
What's the correct understanding of going down to sujood with your hands first and not your knees? Because I thought you were supposed to go down like a camel, and the camel goes down on your hands first, and then the knees.
That's a good point, and that's why there's a khilaf about the position, because some of the other methods. But if you actually watch a camel, because I've ridden camels and gone down on them, when they go down, the camel goes down like this, right, and then goes like that. So that's really what they're telling you. Don't. As you go down there and then down. Camel does the opposite. Camel goes down like this, and then like that, and then like that. So that's what's you're being told not to do. Don't do that. Do the opposite. Go down first like that, and then like that. But it's different understandings. I mean, they're looking at the same hadith and taking different understandings. But again, for me, Imam Malik's madhab, and this is what, if you just understand this one piece, I think it really helps. Malik is not reading these hadiths trying to work out what they mean. Like, don't go down like a camel. He was living, he had 600 teachers from the tabi'een. Ulama, not common people. 600 of the tabi'een who studied with Sahaba. So he's looking at how they're praying. They saw the Sahaba praying, they saw the Prophet ﷺ pray. So it's not like Nasiruddin al-Albani is reading hadiths and trying to work out what they mean. The Prophet didn't say, pray like you read in my hadiths. He said, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray like you see me pray. So the prayer is taken by talaqqi. It's not taken orally, it's taken visually. You learn from people who learn from people who learn from people, and that's this tradition. It's talaqqi. It's transmission. It's not trying to work it out from the books for yourself. You'll go nuts. Really, you'll go crazy. Because there's contradictory hadiths, there's, I heard. You'll spend the rest of your life just trying to work out. And Imam Malik, a man once came to him, and he was from a group called the Murji'iyah, who were a sect. And Imam Malik knew him, that he was. And he said that, Ya Aba Abdillah, let's have a debate. And Imam Malik said, why? He said, so we can search for the truth. And Imam Malik said, and if you win, he said, then you follow me. And he said, and if I win, he said, then I follow you. And he said, what if a third comes, and then he debates us, and he beats us? And he said, then we follow him. He said, you're going to be on a new religion every day of your life. And he just left. Because always there's going to be somebody who can argue better than you. And that's why, if you're going to follow, I said yesterday, don't follow any one man. When you're here in this class, you're not following me. This isn't stuff I made up. I didn't write a book, How to Pray Just Like the Prophet Prayed, by Hamza Yusuf, based on me looking through all the hadiths. I don't care how brilliant of a scholar somebody is.
There's no way one man's going to get it right. This is an effort of thousands of the greatest scholars in Islamic history looking with a methodology. They have Malik's methodology, but Malik's methodology is not his methodology. It's the methodology of the ulama he studied from. It's a group of people. So, but they've looked at each generation went, they said, I don't agree. And that's why you get all these differences of opinion. That's true. But then there's a normative practice, which is what the majority of scholars agreed on. And like the Sadr. Yes, there are Malikis that say Qabl. Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, he's a strong Maliki. Qadi Iyad, he's a strong Maliki. There are ulama from the Maliki that said Qabl. But the majority of them, the overwhelming majority, said Sadr. And that's what's in the books of the madhab. That the mashhur of the madhab is leaving your hands at your side. So if you do that, there's no problem. La bas. It's fine. If you feel more comfortable about that, that's fine. If you want to follow the hadith is there. But there are other hadiths, like I said, that if you read the literature, it's not as clear-cut as it appears.
So you're saying that the Prophet ﷺ used to pray like that mostly?
That's the Maliki position, that he prayed with his hands at his side as the last thing that he was doing. That's the Maliki position. Imam Tabarani relates a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ كان يجعل يده اليمنى على اليسرى أو يرسلهما, or he left them at his side. So he did both. They're both part of the Sunnah, like Imam Ibn Abdul Barr said. They're both part of the Sunnah. But the Maliki school says this is the dominant position, and in the Fard, this is the place to leave your hands. In the Nafida, that's fine. If you want to put them there, there's no karahiyah. But in the Maliki school, it's makruh to do that, unless you're following the position of that's a rajih position. Then there's no karahiyah.
Can you find that in the hadith?
What's that?
Can you find that in the hadith?
About what?
Did that one? You said?
Yeah, no, Tabarani. There's no hadith that is not mat'un fihi that says the Prophet did that. All of them have problems. Every single one. I wrote it, inshallah. When this comes out, there's a whole essay on it. You can read it, decide for yourself. I don't mind. People are fine. Do what they want.
Is it acceptable in the Maliki madhab to make the taslim like other people do? Like if you're leading people in prayer and they might get freaked out?
That's what I do. If I'm leading people that don't know Maliki, then I do it both sides. Because people don't know that you're out of the prayer. They're like waiting. What's that? I mean, I used to do qabl. I used to do qabl when I prayed in places because people didn't know, or they think you're Shia or something. But at a certain point, I just decided, I'm not gonna. It's a strong position, and I think it's just sad to me that it's been so marginalized. Because none of the madhabs consider it sunnah. None of them. Abu Hanifa doesn't consider it sunnah. Did you learn it as a sunnah in the prayer? It's not a sunnah.
Not between the grasping and the actual releasing, but we did the technique of the grasp. Which was, they made amal on all of the three hadiths. One was on the back side of the hand, one was on the wrist, and one was on the forearm. So we did it like this. That's
to get all three.
If they're the other Hajj, as we can listen to Shepherd.
No, it's just,
I found that a bit.
It's crazy. It is. It's like trying to get all three riwayah in there.
It was too pedantic.
I know, you do find in fiqh some pedanticism, that's true. Because they're trying to work out, that's why to me I just like the action. Is that the hadith, the beauty of Malik's madhab to me is the hadith is secondary to the amal. Imam Malik saying, I know there's a lot of hadiths out, and he knew them.
So in his methodology, does amal and medina come before the
It comes before the hadith. It's the amal to him of the ulama, not of the common people. He said it's mutawatir. So the only other hadith that will be equivalent is the mutawatir. And if there's a conflict between them, which there's not in his madhab, but if there was, he's still going to go with the amal, if it's mutawatir amongst the people of Medina. And that's why I mentioned Abu Hanifa, the hadith of raising the hands throughout the prayer is absolutely 100% sahih. It's one of the strongest hadiths in the collections of hadith. And it's the madhab of Imam Shafi'i. That's what he does. Abu Hanifa knew the hadith and Malik knew the hadith. Neither of them used the hadith. Because Abu Hanifa said he had in his opinion, a stronger riwayah of Ibn Mas'ud. And he said that if you put Ibn Umar and Ibn Mas'ud together, you can't. One is not less than the other in their fiqh. And then Imam Malik said, Ibn Umar relates the hadith, but he didn't practice it himself. And Imam Malik would know that because Nafi' was his teacher who was the Mawla of Ibn Umar. Nafi' was his primary teacher and Nafi' studied with Ibn Umar. So if Ibn Umar relates the hadith and yet he didn't practice it, Imam Malik said it's clear that he's relating a hadith from amana, but the hadith is not practiced. And that's why Ibn Wahb said, and if you understand this, you'll understand a lot. Ibn Wahb said, and he's one of the great muhaddithun in the history of Islam, he said, I memorized so many hadiths I became confused. Because there were so many contradictions. And then he said, and thank God for Layth and Malik. Because they cleared it up for him. Because he went and Layth and Malik would say, take that, don't take that. Take that, don't take. And that it's not that they weren't sahih. It was that there was no action. Because there's different, see, you have to think of this in terms of if everything was clear, like if everything in Islam was just spelled out, what would happen? We wouldn't be having this class. There wouldn't be any debates. There wouldn't be any re-examining these texts, the ijtihad. This forces us to look at all this stuff and think and work these things out because but what Allah is asking us to do it with is adab. Ikhtilaf. Just to have adab. Not to get angry at people. Not to, to tolerate. It's teaching us. So, and that's what upsets me. It's not that I'm fine with that. It's a sunnah. I don't have any problem with that. But don't tell me this isn't a sunnah because all you're telling me is you haven't examined the text. You've just read your ulama who happen to be muta'assibun. They're fanatical about their positions and they reject the other position. Because if you study the primary text, which I did, to me, I'm like, I actually think Sadl's stronger than Qabd, personally. And I don't think that about all the positions of Malik. There are positions that I think are weaker. There are positions I prefer Abu Hanifa's position. But in this one, I actually think this is a stronger position because I really believe it was the position of the family of the Prophet.
You once said that you could pray with your hands on your head and your personal life.
It's still valid. It's makruh to do that. But it's not sinful. Unless you were making fun.
It's not a big, it just shows it's not a big deal.
It's not like that. It's makruh to do it like that. It's makruh to khasr, to pray like that. Allahu Akbar.
You're going to be real guys.
And also, like, what are you saying to God? Madhab is good. It really is. I mean, you don't need a madhab if you don't study Sharia seriously. Like, if you're just praying and fasting, you can get by without a madhab. But once you take it seriously, you realize that without it, you'd have to basically reinvent the wheel and just start over again. Because they did it all. And what's left is for people to learn what they did. My view is, in terms of the mu'amalat, there needs to be a lot of revision. I believe that. In terms of ibadat, people should just follow the madhab. But in mu'amalat, buying and selling, marriage laws, all the things that relate to those, there needs to be a broadening. You can't, I think limiting to one madhab in a modern age is very difficult. In ibadat, I don't think it's difficult at all. But in mu'amalat, I think it's not really. So you need the ulama to start doing the majami' al-fiqhiyya like they're trying to do.